I'm Lucas Morgan, 38 years old, and I write code for a living. Not the most exciting profession, but it pays well enough to keep my wife Vanessa in her designer clothes and weekend spa treatments. At least, that's what I thought I was doing. The message glowed on her phone screen, abandoned next to the toaster while she showered upstairs. I wasn't snooping, the notification just lit up as I walked past. Your HR manager and I are friends now. Very good friends, can't wait for our next private meeting. Maya. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. Maya. Vanessa's subordinate at the company where my wife worked as an HR executive. The same Maya who'd been texting Vanessa at all hours. The same Maya who somehow knew details about our marriage that made me uncomfortable. But it wasn't Maya I was thinking about. No, it was the response thread below, where my loving wife of 10 years had written back, "Brandon says hi too. He's here with me now. Luke's at work, as usual. Poor guy has no idea how much fun we're having." Brandon. The name hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Brandon Cole, the fitness influencer who'd been liking every single one of Vanessa's Instagram posts for the past 6 months. The same Brandon who owned that ridiculous red sports car I'd seen parked 3 blocks away during my lunch breaks. The same Brandon whose apartment building I'd driven past twice last week, wondering why it looked familiar. I set down my coffee mug with deliberate care. My hands weren't shaking yet, but they would be soon. "Luke, did you leave already?" Vanessa's voice drifted down from upstairs, sweet as honey. "Still here," I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just finishing my coffee." I took a photo of the text with my own phone. Evidence. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and really looked at my life for the first time in months. The late nights at the gym, the new clothes, the way she'd started doing her makeup differently, more carefully, the sudden interest in networking events that seemed to happen every weekend. The phone calls she'd take in the other room, laughing in a way she hadn't laughed with me in years. Mrs. Almond from next door was watering her roses again, probably hoping to catch some gossip through our kitchen window. The old woman had a talent for showing up whenever drama was brewing. Today, I almost welcomed her nosiness. "Morning, Luke," she called through the screen door. "Everything all right? You look a little pale." "Just tired, Mrs. Almond. Long week?" She nodded knowingly. "I saw Vanessa leaving early yesterday, and the day before, very early, before sunrise even. Before sunrise. While I was still asleep, dreaming of our vacation plans and the anniversary dinner I'd been secretly planning." "She's been working hard," I said automatically. Mrs. Almond's expression suggested she knew exactly what kind of work Vanessa had been doing, and it wasn't the kind that happened in an office. Upstairs, the shower turned off. I had maybe 5 minutes before Vanessa came down, glowing and refreshed, ready to kiss me goodbye before heading off to another day of betrayal. I opened my laptop and started typing. If my wife wanted to play games with HR policies and professional ethics, she'd picked the wrong husband to mess with. I knew every regulation in our company handbook, every clause about conflicts of interest and inappropriate relationships between supervisors and subordinates. The complaint form loaded on my screen. I began filling it out with the methodical precision I usually reserved for debugging code. Formal ethics complaint. Inappropriate relationship between HR executive Vanessa Morgan and subordinate Maya Chen, with evidence of unprofessional conduct and potential policy violations. I attached the photo of the text. Then I started a second complaint about Brandon Cole, who'd been doing consulting work for our company's real estate division. Conflict of interest didn't begin to cover what he'd been consulting on. Footsteps on the stairs.
Vanessa appeared in the kitchen, looking radiant in a way that now made my stomach turn. "Good morning, honey," she said, kissing my cheek. Her perfume was different, expensive. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Kept thinking about work." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She poured herself coffee, checking her phone with practiced casualness. I watched her face change as she saw the messages, watched her delete them with quick, guilty fingers. "Busy day ahead?" I asked. "Oh, meetings, performance reviews, the usual HR stuff." She smiled at me, the same smile that had made me fall in love with her 12 years ago.
"What about you?" "Actually, I think today's going to be very interesting," I said. "I have a feeling some people are about to get exactly what they deserve." She laughed, thinking I was making a joke about some workplace drama she knew nothing about. If only she knew. After she left, I submitted both ethics complaints and sat back in my chair. The first domino had fallen. Now I just had to wait and see how many others would follow. My phone buzzed. A text from Ben, my coworker, and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Coffee? You sound weird in your emails this morning." "Can't do coffee," I typed back. "But can you do me a favor? I need you to help me set up some security cameras." Ben arrived at my house that evening with a duffel bag full of equipment and an expression that said he knew something serious was happening. "Okay, spill it," he said, setting down the bag in my garage workshop. "You've been acting strange all day, and now you want to turn your house into Fort Knox. What's going on?" I handed him a beer and told him everything. The text, the complaints, the months of suspicious behavior I'd been too trusting to see clearly. Ben listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Jesus, Luke. I'm sorry, man. That's really messed up." "It gets worse," I said, pulling out my phone. "I did some digging today. Brandon's been posting photos from places I recognize. The restaurant where Vanessa said she had a work dinner last month. The hotel where she claimed there was a conference 2 weeks ago. He was there, Ben. Every single time." Ben shook his head. "What do you want to do about it?" "I want evidence. Real, undeniable proof. And then I want to watch their whole world fall apart." We spent the next 2 hours installing tiny cameras in strategic locations around the house. Nothing in the bedroom or bathroom. I wasn't that kind of person. But the living room, kitchen, and Vanessa's home office were now under surveillance. "These will record to a cloud server," Ben explained, showing me the app on my phone. "Motion activated, high definition, and completely legal since it's your own house." "Perfect. Now we wait." I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, my work phone rang. Janet from Corporate Ethics, calling about my complaints. "Mr. Morgan, thank you for bringing these matters to our attention. We take all ethics violations very seriously. I'll need to schedule interviews with you, your wife, and the other parties involved." "Of course. When would you like to start?" "This afternoon, if possible. And Mr. Morgan? I should mention that we've received some additional information about this situation from another source." My heart raced. Another source? Maya Chen contacted us this morning. She seemed quite concerned about potential retaliation from Mrs. Morgan. She's requested protection under our whistleblower policy. Maya was flipping. The subordinate was throwing my wife under the bus to save her own career. I almost felt sorry for Vanessa. Almost. "I see. Well, I'm available whenever you need me." The interview that afternoon was everything I'd hoped for and more. Janet had printed out the text messages, along with several others that Maya had provided showing a pattern of inappropriate behavior. "Your wife has been using her position to pressure subordinates into covering for her personal activities," Janet explained. Maya has provided evidence of at least 6 instances where Mrs. Morgan asked her to lie about her whereabouts or create false documentation for time off. "That's disappointing, but not entirely surprising," I said carefully. "There's more. We've also discovered that Brandon Cole has been receiving preferential treatment in contract negotiations. Mrs. Morgan has been involved in approving several deals that should have gone through different channels." I nodded gravely, as if learning this information for the first time instead of having researched it thoroughly the night before. "What happens now?" "Mrs. Morgan will be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Maya will be transferred to a different department, and Mr. Cole's contracts will be reviewed by our legal team." Administrative leave. Vanessa was going to come home today unemployed and furious. I needed to be ready. That evening, I was waiting in the kitchen when she stormed through the front door, her face twisted with rage. "You," she snarled, pointing at me. "You did this. You reported me to ethics." "I reported policy violations to ethics," I corrected calmly. "If you happen to be involved in those violations, that's your problem, not mine." Maya told me everything. She said you threatened her job if she didn't cooperate. I laughed, actually laughed. "Vanessa, Maya came to me. She was scared you were going to throw her under the bus to protect yourself. Turns out she was right." She stared at me, probably seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Not the pushover husband who worked long hours and asked no questions. Not the convenient cover for her affairs and schemes. Just a man who'd finally decided to stop being a victim. "This isn't over, Luke. I have friends at that company. People who owe me favors." "Had friends," I corrected. Past tense, and I wouldn't count on those favors. People tend to distance themselves from ethics violations pretty quickly. She stormed upstairs, slamming doors and making phone calls. I could hear her voice through the ceiling, alternating between pleading and threatening as she tried to find someone willing to help her. My phone buzzed. A notification from the security app. Motion detected in Vanessa's office. I opened the live feed and watched my wife frantically shredding documents and deleting files from her computer. Evidence of her schemes, no doubt. But she was too late and too sloppy. I'd already copied everything from her laptop 2 days ago while she was at the gym. Another notification, text message. "This is insane. They suspended me too. What did you tell them?" Maya followed immediately by another one. "Babe, we need to talk. The company is reviewing all my contracts. This is bad." Brandon. I screenshotted both messages and added them to my growing file of evidence. Then I poured myself a drink and settled in to watch the show. Upstairs, Vanessa was still making calls, her voice getting more desperate with each conversation. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. The next morning, Vanessa left the house early, claiming she needed to clear her head at the gym. I knew better. She was meeting Brandon to plan their next move. I waited 30 minutes, then followed. The gym was one of those upscale places where people went to be seen as much as to work out. Brandon held court near the free weights, his perfectly sculpted physique on display for his social media followers. Even suspended from his contracts, he was still playing the role of fitness influencer. I parked across the street and watched through the windows. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes after me, wearing workout clothes that cost more than most people's monthly gym membership. She made a beeline for Brandon, and they immediately huddled in conversation by the smoothie bar. Their body language told the whole story. Brandon was angry, gesticulating wildly. Vanessa was defensive, trying to calm him down. Other gym members were starting to notice the drama. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Day 3 of the investigation," I murmured to the camera. "Subjects are meeting at the gym to coordinate their stories. Note the panic in their movements." Brandon was getting louder. I couldn't hear the words, but his face was red with anger. Vanessa kept glancing around, embarrassed by the attention they were drawing. Then Brandon made his mistake. He grabbed Vanessa's arm, not gently, and pulled her toward the exit. She stumbled, nearly falling, and several gym members turned to stare. That's when I made my move. I walked into the gym, flashed my membership card, and headed straight for the scene of the drama. By the time I reached them, Brandon had released Vanessa's arm, but the damage was done. "Everything okay here?" I asked loudly enough for nearby members to hear. Vanessa's face went white. "Luke, what are you doing here?" "Working out," I said innocently. "Same as you, though it looks like you're getting a different kind of exercise today." Brandon stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "You need to back off, man. This is a private conversation." "In a public gym," I pointed out. "With my wife? Seems like my business to me." A small crowd was gathering. Nothing gym members loved more than drama, and this was prime entertainment. "Look," Brandon said, lowering his voice, "we can work this out like adults. No need to make a scene." "Oh, I think the scene's already been made," I said, looking around at the watching faces. "The question is, what kind of scene is it? Are you two discussing workout routines, comparing protein powder brands, or are you planning how to fix the mess you've made of your careers?" Vanessa grabbed my arm. "Luke, please, not here." "Why not here?" I asked. "This is where you two have been meeting for months, right? Where you've been planning your little schemes while I was at work, paying for your membership and your designer workout clothes and your protein smoothies." The crowd was growing. Phones were coming out. In the age of social media, public drama was content gold. Brandon tried to salvage the situation. "You're making assumptions, man. Vanessa and I are just friends." "Friends," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it? Because Maya's text messages suggest a different kind of friendship, the kind that violates company policy and marriage vows." Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh, snap." Another person was definitely recording video. Vanessa was pulling on my arm now, trying to get me to leave. But I wasn't done. "You know what the funny thing is, Brandon? You built your whole brand on being authentic. Real fitness, real motivation, real results. But it turns out you're just really good at taking things that don't belong to you." Brandon's face was purple now. "You want to take this outside? Why? So you can try to intimidate me like you just did with my wife? In front of all these witnesses?" The gym manager was pushing through the crowd now, looking nervous about the scene unfolding in his establishment. "Gentlemen, ladies, I'm going to have to ask you to take this conversation elsewhere." "Of course," I said pleasantly. We were just leaving, all three of us, together, like the good friends we are. I walked toward the exit, knowing they had no choice but to follow. The alternative was staying and facing more questions from the crowd and the manager. Outside in the parking lot, Brandon finally exploded. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something." "I think I've exposed something," I corrected. "There's a difference." "This isn't over," he snarled. You're right, I agreed. It's just getting started. I walked to my car, leaving them standing in the parking lot, their perfect facades cracked and crumbling. Behind me, I could hear Vanessa hissing at Brandon to calm down, to think about their next move. But I was already 3 steps ahead. While they'd been planning damage control, I'd been planning total destruction. That evening, I checked my security cameras. Vanessa had brought Brandon to our house. My house. They were in the living room, going through papers, planning their counterattack. Perfect. Now I had them on video, in my home, plotting together. The evidence file was getting thicker by the day. 2 days later, Brandon made his biggest mistake yet. I was driving home from work, taking my usual route through the industrial district, when I noticed the red sports car in my rearview mirror. Brandon's car, following at a distance, but definitely following. At first, I thought it might be coincidence. The road led to several residential areas, but when I took 3 random turns and he stayed behind me, I knew this was intentional. My phone was mounted on the dashboard. I started recording. Brandon Cole is currently following me in his red Mustang, I said calmly. License plate Charlie 779 Mike Delta. Time is 6:47 p.m. I slowed down to see what he'd do. He slowed down too, staying about 50 yards behind me. When I sped up, he matched my speed. This continued for several miles until we reached a stretch of highway with minimal traffic. That's when Brandon made his move. He accelerated hard, pulling up beside me in the left lane. I could see him through his passenger window, face twisted with rage, gesturing for me to pull over. I kept driving straight ahead, maintaining the speed limit. Brandon swerved toward me. Not enough to actually hit me, but close enough to make his intentions clear. He wanted me scared. He wanted me to pull over so he could confront me without witnesses. Subject is now engaging in aggressive driving behavior, I reported to my phone, attempting to force me off the road. He tried it again, coming even closer this time. I had to jerk the wheel to avoid contact. That's when I remembered something. This stretch of highway had a police checkpoint about 2 miles ahead. They'd been running random stops all week, checking for impaired drivers and expired registrations. I sped up slightly, not enough to break the speed limit, but enough to encourage Brandon to follow. He took the bait, accelerating to keep pace with me. The checkpoint came into view. Orange cones, flashing lights, officers directing traffic into a single lane. I slowed down and merged into the checkpoint lane like a law-abiding citizen. Brandon, caught up in his road rage, didn't notice the police presence until it was too late. The officer directing traffic flagged him into the inspection area. I rolled down my window as I passed the checkpoint. "Officer, that red car was just trying to run me off the road. I have it recorded on my phone." The officer looked at Brandon's car, then at me. "Can you pull over there and give a statement?" "Absolutely." 20 minutes later, I watched Brandon fail a field sobriety test. Not because he was impaired, but because he was so angry he couldn't follow simple instructions. When they searched his car, standard procedure for aggressive driving incidents, they found an interesting collection of items, printouts of my home address, photos of my car, and a gym bag that smelled like something had crawled inside it and expired. "Sir," the officer said to Brandon, "can you explain why you have surveillance materials related to this gentleman?" Brandon's explanation made no sense. Something about business disputes and misunderstandings. The more he talked, the worse it sounded. I gave my statement calmly and professionally. I had video evidence of the aggressive driving, I had witnesses from the gym incident, I had documentation of the ethics violations that had started this whole mess. Brandon was cited for aggressive driving, following too closely, and harassment. His car was impounded pending investigation of the surveillance materials. As the tow truck hauled away his precious Mustang, I walked over to where he sat in the back of a patrol car. "You know, Brandon, you really should have stuck to making workout videos. This whole stalking thing doesn't suit you." He glared at me through the window, but there was defeat in his eyes now. His influencer image was ruined. His contracts were canceled, his car was impounded, and now he had a police record. "One down," I murmured to myself as I drove home. That evening, Vanessa was waiting for me with tears in her eyes. "They arrested Brandon," she said. "I heard something about road rage and stalking. Terrible shame. Luke, please. This has gone far enough. Can't we work this out?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved for 10 years. The woman who'd shared my dreams and my bed and my bank account while planning my humiliation behind my back. "Work what out, Vanessa. Your affair, your ethics violations, your attempt to destroy my career to cover your tracks. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? Were you planning to divorce me after you'd secured Brandon's financial future with those contracts? Or were you just going to keep lying indefinitely?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. Tomorrow we're going to have a conversation about how this ends, but it's going to end on my terms, not yours." She started to protest, but something in my expression stopped her. "You don't know me anymore, do you?" I said quietly. "You thought I was the same pushover you married, but that man is gone, Vanessa. You destroyed him. What's left is someone you really don't want to mess with." She packed her bag and left without another word. I poured myself a drink and checked the security footage from the day. Everything was documented. Every conversation, every scheme, every mistake they'd made. Tomorrow, the real endgame would begin. The company's quarterly meeting was scheduled for the following Friday. A big outdoor event in the park behind our office building, complete with food trucks, live streaming for remote employees, and presentations from every department. Vanessa had been one of the featured speakers before her suspension. Her slot was still on the agenda, now marked as Personnel Update Management. Perfect. I spent the week preparing my presentation, not the boring technical update I was supposed to give about our software development projects, but something far more interesting. The Ethics of Modern Business, a case study in corporate responsibility. I'd submitted the title change on Wednesday, claiming it was more relevant to current company initiatives. Janet from Corporate Ethics had approved it enthusiastically, not knowing what I had planned. Friday morning arrived crisp and clear. Perfect weather for destroying careers in public. The park was crowded with employees, their families, and local business partners. The live stream had over 300 viewers logged in. Everything was being recorded for the company archives. I waited through the morning presentations, watching Vanessa hover at the edge of the crowd. She'd shown up despite her suspension, probably hoping to do damage control or rally support from her remaining allies. Brandon was nowhere to be seen. He was dealing with his legal troubles and the complete collapse of his social media empire. His sponsors had dropped him after videos of the gym confrontation went viral. His arrest had made the local news. His influencer career was finished. Maya was there, though, sitting in the back and looking miserable. Her transfer to a different department had been accompanied by a formal reprimand and a pay cut. She kept glancing at Vanessa nervously, as if expecting retaliation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the moderator announced, "our next speaker is Luke Morgan from Software Development, presenting The Ethics of Modern Business." I walked to the podium, connected my laptop to the projection system, and looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of faces, many of them familiar. All of them about to witness something they'd never forget. "Good afternoon, everyone. I want to talk to you today about ethics, about trust, about what happens when people in positions of authority abuse that trust for personal gain." I clicked to my first slide, a screenshot of Maya's text message, enlarged for everyone to see. This message was sent 3 weeks ago by Maya Chen, an HR employee, to her supervisor, my wife, Vanessa Morgan. As you can see, it references inappropriate relationships and conflicts of interest. A murmur went through the crowd. People were pulling out phones, taking pictures of the screen. The live stream chat was exploding with comments. Vanessa was pushing through the crowd, trying to reach the podium. Security stopped her at the rope barrier. "Luke, stop!" she shouted. "This is private." "Actually, Vanessa, this is very public. These are company resources being misused for personal affairs, company policies being violated for financial gain. That makes it everyone's business." I clicked to the next slide. Brandon's Instagram photos, side by side with Vanessa's expense reports, showing identical locations and dates. Here we see a pattern of fraudulent expense claims, business dinners that were actually personal dates, conference attendance that was actually vacation time with a romantic partner. The crowd was buzzing now. Janet from Corporate Ethics was frantically taking notes. The CEO was standing near the front, his face growing darker with each revelation. "But wait, there's more," I continued, channeling every infomercial I'd ever seen. "Because this isn't just about personal misconduct. This is about corruption." Next slide, Brandon's contract history, showing preferential treatment and expedited approvals, all bearing Vanessa's signature. Brandon Cole received over $200,000 in contracts over the past year. Contracts that bypassed normal bidding procedures. Contracts approved by someone he was having an intimate relationship with. Vanessa had stopped trying to reach the podium. She was standing frozen in the crowd, her face white with shock and humiliation. Now, some of you might be thinking, "Luke, this seems personal. Why are you airing your private business at a company meeting?" I clicked to a new slide, screenshots of text messages between Vanessa and Maya, plotting to get me fired for performance issues and attitude problems. Because they made it company business. Because they tried to destroy my career to cover their tracks. because they used company resources and personnel to facilitate their schemes. The final slide was a video compilation, security footage of Vanessa and Brandon in my house, going through my personal papers, audio recordings of them mocking me and planning my professional downfall, screenshots of Brandon's social media posts bragging about taking down corporate drones. This is what betrayal looks like, everyone. This is what happens when people think they're untouchable, when they think they can manipulate systems and hurt people without consequences. The park had gone completely silent except for the sound of phones recording and the distant noise of traffic. Even the catering staff had stopped what they were doing to watch. I looked directly at Vanessa. You wanted a memorable exit from this company. Congratulations, you got one. The CEO stepped forward. Mr. Morgan, thank you for bringing this to our attention in such a comprehensive manner. Mrs. Morgan, you'll need to come with me immediately. Security was already moving toward Vanessa. She looked around desperately, seeking support from her former allies, but found only stares and whispers. Maya was crying in the back row, probably realizing that her cooperation with the investigation wouldn't save her from the public humiliation of being associated with the scandal. One final thought, I said into the microphone. Trust is the foundation of any organization. When that trust is broken, there are consequences. Sometimes those consequences are private. Sometimes they're very, very public. I disconnected my laptop and walked off the stage to scattered applause and a lot of shocked murmuring. Vanessa tried to approach me as I packed up my equipment. Luke, please, can we talk privately? Everything that needed to be said has been said, Vanessa, and everyone who needed to hear it has heard it. You've ruined my life. No, I corrected. You ruined your life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. She was escorted from the premises by security, her career and reputation in ashes. The live stream recording would be watched thousands of times. Her name would be permanently associated with corporate corruption and personal betrayal. As I walked to my car, Ben caught up with me. That was intense, man. Are you okay? I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. For the first time in months, everything is exactly as it should be. Behind us, the company meeting was breaking up into small groups of employees discussing what they'd just witnessed. The story would spread through the industry within days. Vanessa's professional life was over. Brandon was already finished, his legal troubles and public humiliation having destroyed his influencer career and his business prospects. Maya would survive, but would never hold a position of trust again. And me, I was free. Free from lies, free from betrayal, free from people who thought they could use me and discard me without consequences. I drove home to a house that was finally completely mine again. The revenge was complete.